How you doing? I'm Matt Waldin, pro drifter, and today we're here with Mishimoto and a 2008 Mitsubishi Lancer. Today this Mitsubishi Lancer is going to get in the royal treatment, Mishimoto Radiator of course, and lifetime warranty, can't go wrong with this guy. This fully polished, fully TIG welded piece is much better than the stock. Not only does it look better, cools better too. Let's go ahead, get started with this install. To install the Mishimoto Radiator in a 2008 Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution, you will need flathead screwdriver, Phillips head screwdriver, needle nose pliers, regular pliers, ratchet and extension, 10mm socket, 12mm socket, panel tool, coolant funnel, and coolant. Installation difficulty is a 5 out of 5 because of removal of the front bumper, and installation total time should take about 2 to 2.5 hours. First step, make sure it's in park and or the parking brake is set, and jack up the front end. Next up is to detach the negative terminal of the battery, which, if you didn't notice, we're in the trunk right now. All right, first thing is to remove the lower panel from the car, and there is a lot of fasteners that hold this together. A lot of these are pop clips, some are 10mm head screws. Let's go ahead and get all of these undone, get the lower panel off the car. Here's the drain for the radiator. And before you open this, you want to make sure that the car is cooled off completely. You don't want any pressure in the system, so make sure the car is completely cooled off, the battery terminal is disconnected, and open this guy up and drain the coolant out of her. After you take the 2 screws out, the one 10mm over here, unstrap the air box and lift the whole assembly out of the way. Next step is to remove the rest of the air box and unplug the mass airflow sensor. Next step is to remove the hose clamp from the mass airflow sensor and intake tube so that we can remove this whole air box assembly. In order to replace their Evo X radiator, you're going to have to remove the upper rad support as well as the front bumper. If you don't feel up to this task, you should probably leave it to the professionals. Next, use your panel tool and remove the 3 clips from the factory air diversion plate. Next, remove the 4 10mm head screws from the front bumper. And there's a sneaky one down in here too. Make that 5. Remove the 3 screws from the inner splash panel to the front bumper. We're removing the 2 10mm head bolts that hold the front bumper to the fender. Once the 3 screws are removed and the 10mm head screw here, remove the bumper by pulling straight off. Remove the pop clip that is in here next to the sneaky bolt. And as your front bumper is coming off, if it's equipped with fog lights, make sure you unplug the fog light harness. All right, next step is to remove the U-pipe from the lower radiator connection using the squeeze clamps. Squeeze them together, slide them back, and you can remove that. Remove the upper hose, same spring clamps on those. Just press these together, slide it back off of there. Just pull it right off. After you have the front bumper off, remove the charge pipe from the top of the intercooler by removing the hose clamp on top of the intercooler, as well as the 2 12mm bolts that hold the charge pipe to the upper rad support. Remove each of the headlight bolt brackets. Remove the brackets and bolts from the upper rad support to the front bumper stay. And remove the upper rad support bolts on either side of the car. Once you get all the bolts removed from the upper rad support, you want to lift this guy up slightly. You're going to find some stays for the wiring harness that goes to the hood latch. Those you want to pop out of place because we're going to need to at least push this back on the engine a little bit. While you're in there, you also want to disconnect the horn. And slide the upper rad support out of the way. Now you can see the top half of the radiator here. Take off the coolant overflow bottle hose. Next, you want to unplug the wiring harness from the fans. And next step is to release the AC condenser core, if your car is equipped with it, to the rad, which just clips into place. And you just want to leave this in here. This is going to stay in the car, but so that it's separate from the radiator. Once the fans are unplugged, the overflow bottle's off, and the AC condenser's off, you can pull the rad straight up out of the car. In preparation for installing the Mishimoto radiator, you want to remove the bottom rubber isolators from the OE rad. Those will be installed later on the Mishimoto radiator. We're going to show you how to remove the OE fans from the OE rad in this video. If you've purchased the Mishimoto fan kit, you will not need to remove the fans from the OE rad. First step in removing the fan assembly is to remove the 10mm bolts that are on the side of the fans. There's one on each side. Keep these brackets separate because they are side oriented. Once these brackets are off, push down on both locking tabs simultaneously to remove the fans. All right, with the stock radiator out and side by side with the Mishimoto, the differences are quite obvious. As you can see, the Mishimoto is fully polished, fully TIG welded, almost twice the thickness of the stock one. And that means that it's double the cooling. Can't go wrong with that. You're gonna be able to beat on the car a lot longer with this one. In this particular installation, we're gonna be installing the OE fans onto the Mishimoto radiator. They go on just like they came off of the OE one. Slide them into the brackets, lock them down with these guys, and you're good to go. Next, we're gonna reinstall the rubber grommets that came off of the bottom of the stock radiator. And the radiator is ready to go back in the car. Make sure that the mounting points on the lower drop right in. And before finalizing the installation, hook the AC condenser back in to the brackets that are supplied on the Mishimoto radiator. And we're ready to reinstall the upper rad support, making sure that the top radiator posts fall into these holes. Like a glove. Man, this thing is really nice fitting in this car. Nice. Liking the way this is going already. Reinstall the fan harness back onto the fan shroud and plug the fans back in. And reinstall the hood latch sensor harness to the upper rad support and plug the horn back in. After the fan harnesses and the hood latch sensor harness is plugged in, reinstall all the hardware hand tight first. We'll go ahead and tighten all these down later, but for now, let's get them all in place. Reinstall the upper radiator hose. In this case, we would like to recommend the Mishimoto silicone hose kit. Reinstall the lower radiator hose. Make sure that both hose clamps are securely seated behind the bead of the radiator. And now it's time to reinstall the boost pipe. Install the two 12mm head bolts that hold the boost pipe to the upper rad support. Tighten the hose clamps on the upper boost pipe. Now it's time to reattach the front bumper and the lower panels. Install the 10mm head bolts that fasten the bumper to the upper rad support. Should be 5 total. If your car is equipped with fog lights, make sure you reattach the fog light harness, which is directly beneath the hood latch. Reinstall the OE air diversion plate. These clips utilize the Phillips head screws. Reinstall the screws in the corner of the bumper on both sides of the car. These screws have a 10mm head and are also pointed at the end. After those are installed, reinstall the pop clips that have the Phillips heads on them. And do the same thing on the other side. There we go. Put the intake back together. Reinstall the negative terminal of the battery. Once all the connections are made good and tight, time to fill up the radiator. We recommend using 50% antifreeze, 50% distilled water. Your mix doesn't have to be perfect, but the closer you get to perfect, the less chances of it freezing. For a little bit of extra cooling power, I recommend Liquid Chill by Mishimoto. Stuff works great. While you're filling up your radiator, make sure that there are no leaks coming out from underneath the car. Once you're positive that there are no leaks and everything's tight, go ahead and start up the car, turn the heat on high, and keep an eye on that temperature gauge while everything's bleeding out. Make sure you don't have any leaks and you're good to go.